Hi, my name is Don Burton, and welcome to my integrated training plan for KIN 585 performance planning. I'll have a little overview of my coaching philosophy, the long-term athlete development model, which has now been modified by Swimming Canada as an appropriate athlete development model, the athlete bio that I've chosen for this assignment, the event profile that she races, some gap analysis, objectives of those analysis, some COVID impacts and the circumstances that have been pushed upon her and the rest of the world. And it obviously has had an impact on her ability to go after the benchmarks that are in front of her. The metrics for training that we use, both in and out of the water, the YTP and the macro, the micro, the taper, all the competitions, everything that's involved, the integrated support team, and a conclusion. So I work at the Ontario Swim Academy. It's an organization that's put together by the NSO Swimming Canada and the PSO Swim Ontario. I'm the head coach. Every year I have somewhere between 12 and 18 athletes. I currently have 17 full-time people and one part-time person who comes in 4 times a week. I have several para-athletes that train as well. They train slightly different times than the able-bodied people. And we work directly with the High Performance Centre of Ontario. We are at the Toronto Pan Am Centre, which was lucky enough that it mostly stayed open, even though not all the athletes that I work with were allowed to come in. It is a world-class facility. It's less than 10 years old. It is a wonderful place to work. And I have worked directly with the athlete that's identified in this assignment for the last 3 years, although she's been locked out for a total of over 13 months when you add it all up. And our IST, our integrated support team, is supported by the Canadian Institute of Ontario, funded by Swim Ontario, Swimming Canada, and the Ontario government. My coaching philosophy starts with its core values, and trust is the very first one. I can't seem to get anywhere with anyone. I don't know how I would, unless I have a working relationship which is based on trust. With trust, I can then have open and honest communication with the athlete or athletes. The athletes who are then more able to really take some personal responsibility in what they're doing. There is a real partnership between myself and the athlete. They will trust the process, and they need to be internally motivated, or we all need to be internally motivated. The vision that I have is we have world-class leadership for the organization that we work with and the athletes that we interact with on a regular basis. Everyone follows this leadership. We have the expectations of world-class as well. So everything is set up in order to be striving towards and achieving world-class performances. Consistency. There's no value in having world-class performances, leadership, and expectations for one day and then not followed up the next day. It is about being consistent. How good are you on your bad days? We need to have great people. It is too hard to work with people and go and put all your emotion into it if you're being treated poorly. So having great people is a requirement, and a relentless drive to work from within by all, the athletes, the IST, everyone. Some personal statements: always learning from the athletes. I am lucky to constantly be learning from every athlete that I work with and enjoying the process along the way. If everyone is enjoying the process, it makes it a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable for everybody. 99% right is 100% wrong. Usually in game situations, under stress, time, travel, the last moment of a competition, mistakes are made. So 99% right is usually not what you're going to get when you're in a competition. The mistakes that are made every single day in practice, those are the ones that show up. It's not about how good are you on an awesome day. It's how good are you on the days where things aren't going very well. And that's why 99% right is 100% wrong is a very accurate statement. Never underestimate your competition. It's a key mistake that so many people make in so many different sports. And keep moving forward, regardless of the outcome of each and individual competition or race. Keep moving forward. The appropriate athlete development model, which is the old long-term athlete development model. So here we have world-class on track times, We're focusing on the women's events. There's another form for the guys, and here we're focusing on the 100 back, and the 200 back is a secondary event. The performance pathway is about developing high-performance athletes capable of winning at the highest levels of international competition and bringing home medals from Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, World Championships, etc. That is the point of everything. Obviously not everyone is going to get there, and not everyone starts off their journey in the same spot. It's not linear. It's meant to be. It really isn't. People will hop on and go sideways, and sometimes they'll hop off to return. This is a journey that the athletes go through. This has been modified several times, and this is a much better reflection as to how things really seem to go now compared to the previous models. So here we have the athlete that I've identified. Her name is Piper Mitchell. She is 15 years old. She has been swimming competitively since she was 7 years old, way back in 2013. And she's currently in a train-to-train category, moving towards train to compete. The last 2 years have been very tough. No racing at all, minimal traditional training. In fact, she was kept out of the pool for such a long time that her parents actually bought a very expensive swim spa, put it in her backyard, and she swam through that rain, sleet, snow, everything. Very focused lady who really wanted to find a way to do well, even though she was kicked out of the pool. Just this past week at the Eastern Canadian Championships, she placed second in the youth division, which is the 15 and unders, in the 100-meter backstroke. And to do a comparison from 2 full years prior to that, at the Ontario Provincial Championships for an individual age group, so she would have been 13 back then, she was third in the 200 backstroke. From puddle to podium at the Toronto Pan Am Centre, that's their vision. It's plastered all around the wall, and it really is a great motto for this facility, but it also is a great motto for kids in sport and as they go through it. So Piper, her age group swimming, she just joined her local little tiny team called the Collingwood Clippers at a YMCA. It's about 90 minutes to 2 hours away from Toronto in a downhill skiing area. She's the youngest of 3 kids, very big sports family. And they had to apply to the Ontario Swim Academy in the summer of 2019. She was accepted, and then they actually moved to a condo in Markham. Piper really is a very caring, generous person. She includes everyone. She puts other people first. That's somewhat of a detriment sometimes. She's developing her confidence through understanding of what she does every day in practices. She's an outstanding kicker. She has a capacity for training. She does have some shoulder balance issues, which we'll get into later. She's got some high anxiety and some medication challenges, and she is working with a registered, with her nutritionist, as well as a sports psychologist. She's strong academically. Her father is a GP. Her mother has her PhD. There's high expectations for school, and there's obviously a lot of stress that goes along with that. She is excellent at communicating before, during, and after training sessions, pretty unique for such a young person. She will develop into multiple different events and longer distances. However, because of her shoulder issues, we really focused on just trying to keep backstroke moving forward and progressing, which has been working really well. With less shoulder problems, she will be able to do more butterfly, which she's quite proficient in, but probably she will stay focused on backstroke. And she is one of the youngest in the group, which is very helpful. She can chase everybody else. Here you can see the Ontario Swim Academy, the current program of athletes, and there's Piper. And inside our group, we have a bunch of performance objectives, 3 people making the junior team. We fell short. We had 2 qualified just 2 weeks ago. 3 athletes selected for the Canada Games. Hopefully we will find that out in the next couple of weeks. Piper definitely did what she needed to do. And there's obviously a minimum expectation of 2% improvement in all sports, or in all the events for all the different athletes. So here we have the event profile for the 100-meter backstroke. I did include the 200 backstroke in there as well because that is Piper's secondary event. And as she is so young, she could easily flip-flop and be one or the other, although I did focus on the 100 for this assignment. So race components, she's in the water. She starts off in the water and she's facing backwards the entire way. She needs to use backstroke flags to make sure that she doesn't run into the wall for her 2-length race for the 100 backstroke and 4 lengths for the 200 backstroke. From a training perspective, she's in the water 9 times a week. Each pool session is 2 to 2.5 hours long. There's a 30-minute pre-pool session, a lot of prehab work for shoulders and core, a little bit of muscle coordination stuff, some stability, and some power and explosive movements as well, just before they're done, before they hop in the water. There are 3 1-hour strength and conditioning sessions every single week as well, unless it's impacted or changed because of training or training because of swim meets, whether we're going to one or whether it's impacting our training sessions. And although there is a focus for each practice on an energy system, just the way the swimming is, all systems are touched or tapped every single training session. So trying to minimize burying the athletes by mistake and trying to focus in on one main thing is obviously a key component for most practices. Swimming is an endurance-based sport. They need to have great max VO2, great breath control, because it really is, it's not like running where you can just breathe whenever you want. When you breathe and how you breathe has a huge impact on everything that you're doing in the water. It will minimize everything if you do it wrongly. Power, strength, balance, symmetry, extremely important in the sport of swimming, in the 200 backstroke and the 100 backstroke. Tight splitting, if it's the 200 backstroke for the 350s, they need to be very, very close. With the last 50 there being a lift or a little bit faster than the last 50 going into the finish. Every stroke, regardless of whether it's the 100 on the first stroke or the last stroke, each stroke needs to have an acceleration through it, and each dolphin kick needs to have an acceleration through it as well. Psychologically, you need to have a great state of mind. You need to believe in yourself. You have to have mental toughness and emotional control, something that is very challenging, obviously, when you're up super early and up late at night. This past weekend alone at the Eastern Canadian Championships, they were racing at 8:30 at night, and they had been there since 7 o'clock in the morning. Life balance, habits, lifestyles, nutrition, sleep, time management, all major impacts or items that can majorly impact how things go. So here's a little gap analysis. So the strengths of Piper is training. She's achieved a benchmark in kicking. She is a fabulous kicker on her back, very, very fast, right along with Kylie Mass. Tactically, the kick out work is very solid, although there is a difference. She hasn't achieved the benchmark, but she can do the distance. She's got some good speed underwater. Her pacing is solid, her splitting, and her aggressiveness. Technique, she's very efficient with her strokes. Because she has not swam a whole lot, because she hasn't been able to because of her shoulder issues, she's very particular with the strokes that she uses, and they're very efficient. She has put swimming first. School is a close second, but she has put swimming first. She moved from almost 2 hours away to come here. She goes to a sports school, and she actually really does a wonderful job of looking after sleep, which helps her with her recovery. She enjoys the process, and she is mentally tough. She's a tough cookie. Some of her weaknesses, lack of pull. Because of the shoulder issue, she's hardly done any pull. She's done a minimal amount of swimming, and she's done virtually zero work with any kind of paddle. So larger surface area to work on the power and the speed aspect. She hasn't been able to do that. That does impact, obviously, the 100 backstroke on the front end. Tactically, she can be too aggressive. Although it is a strength, it is also a weakness. Sometimes she overcooks herself, and she has a hard time finishing it off. Her approach to the turns is a technical weakness, which will be identified and worked on a regular basis. Nutrition, anxiety, and blood work. She does have some challenges that she's working on, and she does have some people helping her with those things, although those are some identified issues for sure. Emotional control and self-belief in her abilities. She really is... she is working on those things, although those are definitely some weaknesses that she has that we have identified. So here's the event profile. The 100 backstroke long course meters. So back in July of 2019, when she first came and started working with me, she was 1 minute and 14 seconds. And then just before the lockdown happened, she was able to go into competition, and she went 1:12. So even though she's been out of the water for sort of on and off for over the last 2 years, she has been able to whittle down this time. And just this past weekend, she went and busted out a 105.67, which is important because if you look over to the right side of the screen where it says 2017 Canada Games results in August, this is an event that obviously she's trying to qualify for this year, the 2022 Canada Games, which always happens 1 year after the Olympics. She's in a position, she's in the right age group that she can't qualify for that. So her time would have placed her third at the previous Canada Games. She has achieved the Canadian Trials qualifying time. She's not quite there in the on-track times, although she's working on it, and by the end of the summer, she really should be there. Now, the Canada Games team has not been named yet. They only take 12 able-bodied males and 12 able-bodied females, even though there are 16 pool events. So obviously some people have to double up, and everything will be ranked based on each individual athlete's time for the event compared to the world record. And we should find out pretty soon how things go with that. So here's Piper's gap analysis of her 100 backstroke. So I've listed Piper's information and Kylie Mass's information. So Kylie's is from the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, which obviously was 2021. And Piper's was just this past weekend in Montreal at the Eastern Canadian Championships. So reaction time, 15 meter, 25, all the different components that are broken down into time is there to go over. So here we have her strengths, her 5 meter approach into the turn and her 5 meter approach into the finish. So from the 45 to the 50 meter mark, Piper is 3.56 seconds and Kylie is 3.41 seconds. So Piper is not that much slower going into the turn, even though a turn's not that fast. But going into the turn, the approach to the wall is not bad. And if you look at the last 5 meters, Piper's actually faster than Kylie at the moment. Now, that is because of 2 reasons. Number one, on the weekend, when Piper did her 105.67, she had too much energy left. She didn't go out fast enough. She needs to be more aggressive, which was quite odd. Normally, she's quite often too aggressive, but she was very, very nervous for this event, and she was a little bit too cautious. Kylie Mass, on the other hand, at the Olympics, she went out like a rocket, and she was struggling a little bit on the finish. Although she did a good job on the finish, she did get out touched, and maybe that's one of the reasons why Piper's last 5 meter finish is faster than Kylie's. Now, for the last 5 meters into the turn, so stroke rate was how many strokes you take per minute at different parts throughout the race over 3 full cycles. So this is the one spot and the only spot where Piper's stroke rate is pretty much equal to Kylie's. For the most part, Piper's stroke rates are way too low. So here we see some 15 meter mark differences. So here's some weaknesses that Piper is showing. So to the 15 meter mark, so the maximum distance you're allowed to go underwater is 15 meters. So Piper gets there, her head crosses the 15 meter mark at 7.32 seconds. Now Kylie can get there in 6.55. That's 0.8 of a difference for the first 15 meters, quite substantial. Now the lead that Kylie gets on the next 10 meters is even greater. Kylie can get to the 25 meter mark in 12.37 seconds to Piper's 14.64. So the spread is getting larger and larger. And the underwater part, although I said that Piper is quite exceptional on pure kicking on the surface, underwater she hasn't figured out how to move fast enough yet. Now, being out of the water for months and months and months, not being in a weight room for most of the time over the last 2 years, and also being 15 years old versus a lady in her early 20s who didn't have any real hiccup in her training and has been able to just go straight through all the way. Obviously, Kylie is very powerful, very fast, and Piper is just trying to figure out how to do this. On a reaction time, it also shows up that just on how fast you get your body off of the wall, that's what the reaction time is. So Kylie can do it in 0.55 of a second, and Piper is 13/100 slower than that, just getting off the wall. Again, that is something that will be that is identified, but will be worked on going forward. Now, here's a big difference: the power and the aggressiveness that Piper is currently missing. Kylie's stroke rate at the 15 meter mark, once she surfaces, is 52 cycles per minute versus 43 for Piper. So as I said earlier on, Piper is very steady, very consistent, very planned out. She has not been working on high stroke rate because we haven't been able to because of her shoulder issues. But moving forward, this is a gap that needs to be identified. So some of the objectives in training, the lack of power and has an impact on stroke rate and distance per stroke. We need to make sure that we have a continued management program for her shoulders. Less pain equals more swimming equals the ability to do some pull, having higher stroke rates, more power, and some paddle work. Tactically, she can be too aggressive, but part of this has a lot to do. Part of this has to do with the fact that inconsistent training. Swimming has really only been about 50% of her total volumes all the way through the last 2 years by being in the water and out of the water, lots of shoulder problems. So more training, being consistent in the water by not having shoulder issues, consistent stroke rate, consistent stroke count, and a higher increased stroke rate all the way through as well. Technically, lots of velocity approaching the turn. So stroke rate into the turn needs to be kept up. A faster twist and a faster rotation speed, not lift up her head into the turn. That's an objective. She can use the bottom of the pool. There's a reference marks down there. She can use that as opposed to visibly looking into the wall. She just needs to teach her brain that she doesn't have to do that. She has to twist faster using her obliques and flip quicker using her abs and to get into a better body position. From a lifestyle perspective, gaps of nutrition challenges, with eating, and there's stress attached to that. She's been experimenting with being a vegan. There's been inadequate total caloric intakes and causing some issues. She definitely has gotten way too lean and just not enough protein, obviously by changing some stuff around. She has now increased her protein with nuts and has added chicken back to her diet. She has been working with a nutritionist who seems to really be connecting with her very, very well. Piper's not reluctant to share and to talk with this individual, so that's working very, very well. It is a process, and she is understanding the process, and she is working well, developing a fuel plan for every day, for the non-training days, the days that we have singles, and the days that we have doubles. She has some emotional control gaps and some self-belief worries or lack of self-belief on some days is quite substantial. So, creating and developing a log of positive training and reviewing them and understanding the process will help reinforce the self-belief that we need to have. Test results, going over the test results, going over the race results to help build confidence. And we have a Smartabase app that we use, and we just review it to help her remember how things have been going. So the benchmarks, different times and target times for different components of the race, reliable stroke rates and stroke counts, approach into the wall plus the total turn time itself, reliability of technique, consistent blood work and nutrition, emotional control, lower anxiety, and improved competition times, and achieving an on-track time. The COVID-19 impact, unfortunately, it moved into this current swim season. We were almost out of it, but not quite. So Piper was out of the weight room for the first 6 months of this season. Although restrictions were lifted somewhat, she was not allowed in the weight room. It was very, 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 very specific as to who was allowed in there. Minimal number of people, and minimal number, a very, very high level of performance in order to be there. Piper did not reach that threshold. She was out of the water for a month in January. This definitely increased her anxiety of her being around other people. No physio, no massage for some of this that really, really hurt and hindered her ability to really get on top of her shoulder issues. Not having regular group meetings is something that she definitely missed out on. She verbally talked about that. Just a basic lack of socializing. So lots of metrics, in essence, creating a toolkit or a dashboard. So the Smartabase that we use, both the athletes and the coaches, weekly meetings, pre and post swim sessions, anthros, hydration, testing, blood work, food journals, race analysis, video work, all splits and stroke rates and stroke counts, This can be done at training sessions and at competitions. Here's my YTP. I put it all on one page and I reduced it. Obviously you can't see it in this format. I have broken it down, but it is on one page. It does all work. It is throughout the entire swim calendar, which pretty much goes from Labor Day weekend through till the end of July or August. 6 of the 9 sessions parallel with the High Performance Center of Ontario and their YTP. 3 of the sessions don't. The other group comes in much later when the academy athletes are in school. This is the year of 2021-2022. It's post-Olympic year. It's also the year of Canada Games. And the training volumes for this athlete, Piper, in this assignment are lower than the volumes for the rest of the group. Due to her shoulder issues, her kick volumes are way, way higher. Total volumes for each microcycle are also down because of that. Kicking takes much longer than swimming does. And she has increased time with the sports psychologist and the nutritionist. So impacts on our YTP. So high school exams are happen twice a year. Obviously, the one that's in the dead of winter is really, really tough one. So with the increased stress, less sleeping, I reduce the volumes. I reduce the intensity, trying to make sure that I don't lose them for like a full week after exams. Holidays have impacts on the building hours and obviously the number of sessions or the length of the sessions that we can have at certain times. Competitions and camps. Toronto Pan Am Sports Center here hosts so many different events: swimming events, diving events, artistic dancing, which is synchro, and there are competitions and camps. It reduces our training on a pretty regular basis. We travel, that'll have an impact as well. And stress, illness, and injury obviously has an impact with each individual athlete. And then there's the Toronto traffic, one of the busiest places in North America. And you also have the added bonus of having weather issues in the winter. So here I've just highlighted there's 3, I broke down the season into 3 macros. They're all roughly 16 to 18 weeks in length. It's really just based on when the key events are for qualifying meets and then working backwards from them. There's obviously a date all the way across. Each week starts with a Monday because the meets are on the weekends, usually Friday, Saturday, Sundays. I've identified whether it's a 1-day meet, a 2-day meet, a 3-day meet, whether we're traveling, where the location is, whether it's a target meet or where it's a meet that we're just going to train through. Sometimes we do race simulations just during practice. They'll put on their race suits. They're very expensive, $800 race suits, and we'll practice either a full race or different components of each race. As I said, there's 3 different phases throughout the season. The first one is 16 weeks long, starts right after Labor Day. The next one is 18 weeks. It's a block. It's a great block that goes right into Canadian trials, usually the second week of April, depending on how Easter messes up the calendar. The last block is the one that has the biggest variable because if you swim well at a certain point, your summer will continue. So it'll either be 16 weeks or 18 weeks long for Piper Mitchell, the identified athlete. We do 3 key sets weekly all the way through those season. We log it and we compare it all the way through. Plus, we also do lactate testing every 6 to 8 weeks all season long to make sure that the athletes are in the targeted spots that we're looking for. As I said, I've listed exams in here as well. It's really a key component that we need to work around. You can't fight it. It's got to be in there. I've lost way too many athletes for way too many days on getting sick by not programming that in. Here we have total number of hours. So it's swimming plus the pre-pool plus the strength and conditioning. On average, for the most part, they're hovering right around the 25-hour mark. When we get into swim meets, actually the number of hours that they are there for actually increases because they're warming up, doing a race, cooling down, and doing that multiple times over 3 to 5 or 8 days for a competition. I plan out and log the swim volume and intensity. I obviously then go back and check to see what the plan was and what we actually did, because obviously there are lots of things can happen along the way. If Piper's shoulders are really, really sore, then I will totally change stuff on the fly because I would like to have her recover faster. There's no sense in making her shoulders more painful if it doesn't make sense to do so. So I have listed here her total number of kilometers. So her highest kilometers in a week is 60K. That is lower than everyone else in the group, but it is applicable for her. The in-water priorities, you can't focus on everything all at once. So whether we're doing aerobic or anaerobic work or skill refinement, I've made it priority 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice that in the first 3 months, 3.5 months, I made skill refinement the second priority. So if we're not going to have a good foundation of technique at the beginning of the year, I don't know how we can actually say that we're going to make technique an important thing in the gap analysis. It's got to be worked on. So that is priority number 2, always pretty much for the first 3.5 months. And inside those priorities, there's starts and turns and underwater kick work and breakout. Weekly microcycles, I've listed our nice, soft, early morning start times of 5:10 in the morning, pre-pool, and on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, we do doubles, so they'll be finished at about 7:15 on 3 nights a week after being there at 5:10 in the morning. So that is over 14 hours with school in between. Those are full days for these guys. In a traditional schedule, in the weekly micro cycles, there are 3 key sets, one on Monday mornings, one on Thursday nights, and one on Saturday mornings. These are sets that I'll do pretty much all the way through. Obviously, big competitions and travel days will mess things up, but for the most part, this gives us some information as to how things are going. I will change it all the time. I will change it up, and obviously on the fly if needed. If it's supposed to be something and I need to modify because Piper can't swim it, then absolutely we'll change it. The strength and conditioning is planned out strength to power ratios. So at the very beginning of the season, it's all strength. And as we get closer to a competition date, we'll drop down the strength and we'll move into power. Just like in the pool, we prioritize the stuff in the weight room. So we'll do testing at the very beginning of each macro cycle. Then we'll do a little intro to strength at the very beginning of the season. Sometimes we have some new athletes, or they've been on the water or they've been away from the weight room for a few weeks. Strength development moves into maximum strength, moves into strength into speed, and then speed into power, going right into our big competition. I have an amazing, wonderful, energetic, integrated support team: biomechanist, strength and conditioning coach, a physiologist, a mental performance coach who swam herself, is married to an Olympic swimming medalist, and has a daughter who is an Olympic swimming medalist. I can't find a better person to help with the sport of swimming, who happens to be a sports psychologist. We have a physiotherapist, RMT. For the most part, those 2 individuals were not able to help out most of the group, and specifically Piper, quite a bit for the last couple of years. We have a team, a general practitioner doctor, who gets all the information from the blood work and will meet with the athletes. We get stuff quarterly done, and she'll then pass stuff along to either the dietitian or myself, the strength and conditioning person. And we have a yoga instructor as well. We prioritize all the IST professionals as well, between individual meetings and group meetings, and then coach consultations as well, usually followed after there's been a group meeting, followed by individual stuff, and then we have coach consultations. So as I said before, the YTP this really is an integrated training plan. It's a working document. It's been modified countless times. When I first started working on this back in August, I put together a bunch of stuff under certain expectations and parameters and understanding of where things were in COVID. And even without COVID, things change all the time. It's detailed. It's supported by evidence. It's supported by Swimming Canada and Swim Ontario. And I lean on the staff of the IST to help me support what we're doing as well. There's constant communication, and it's really important, and we can't make this stuff happen unless we're having communication on a regular basis. And by talking on a regular basis, we can then act fast if we need to make some sound changes. And it really, again, it comes down to the first thing, which is trust. We must have trust with the athletes in order for them to want to communicate with us and to be open and honest. It really does take a team to support a team. Here's some of my references, and thank you very much.